Her name was Anastasia. She arrived in Topkapı Palace at 13, speaking no Ottoman. By the time she was done, she had outlasted 4 sultans. This is how she learned to survive the first year. You learned the room before you owned it. That is the only way to say it. Not that you were patient. Patience is what people call the thing from the outside, when they cannot see what is happening on the inside. From the inside, it was something else entirely. It was hunger wearing the face of stillness. It was a calculation so long and so quiet that by the time anyone else noticed it, the calculation was already complete. You had been inside Topkapı Palace for 3 years by the time 1607 came around. 3 years of stone corridors that all looked the same until they didn't. Of footsteps that meant different things, depending on which hour they fell. Of women who smiled at you in ways that had nothing to do with warmth. You had arrived speaking almost no Ottoman. You had learned it the way you learned everything in this place. By listening first, speaking second, never letting on how much you understood before you were ready to use it. You left the girl who arrived somewhere in the first winter. You do not think about her much. She would not have survived what came after. You were Greek, born on an island, the Aegean held like a secret, in a village where the smell of salt and dried fish was so constant you had stopped noticing it, the way you stopped noticing your own heartbeat. Anastasia, they had called you then. Your mother had named you for resurrection, for the idea that what is lost can return, that the ending is never entirely the ending. You had not thought about that meaning when you were young. You thought about it now, here, in a palace that had its own language for endings, its own architecture of loss. The name sat inside your chest like a stone at the bottom of a well, present, unreachable, useful only as a measure of how far down you had gone. You did not mourn it. Mourning cost time, and time in Topkapı was a currency you spent with the same precision you spent everything else. The capture itself you did not revisit in detail. You had been perhaps 14, perhaps 15. The records that existed did not agree, and you yourself had stopped being certain of the exact season, which was its own kind of mercy. What you remembered was the quality of the light on the water that last morning, and the smell of the boat, and the sound of a language you did not yet speak, closing over you like a second sea. You had not cried. Even then, even at that age, some part of you had understood that crying was information, and you were not yet ready to give anyone information. By the time you reached Constantinople, the city the Ottomans called Istanbul, the city that sat at the hinge between 2 worlds and belonged entirely to neither, you had already begun the work. Not consciously, not with a plan, but the part of you that had always watched rooms more carefully than other children watched rooms, that had always known which adult in a space held the real authority regardless of who was speaking loudest. That part had not stopped working, simply because everything else had been taken away. If anything, it had sharpened. Loss has a way of clarifying what remains. The harem was not what people outside imagined. People outside imagined silk and idleness and women arranged like decorations, waiting to be chosen or discarded at a whim. What you found was a court inside a court, its own hierarchies built over generations, its own currencies of favor and proximity and information, its own punishments for miscalculation that were nonetheless devastating for being invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. The Valide Sultan commanded it. The Sultan's mother, whose authority over the household was absolute, in ways that even the Grand Vizier could not easily override. The Cuddons held their positions by the sons they had produced, because sons were the only currency in this place that did not depreciate. The other women, the concubines, the attendants, the women who had been here longer than some of the stone itself seemed to have been here, watched each other the way hawks watch a field. Not dramatically, just constantly, because that is what survival looks like when it has had long enough to settle into habit and stop announcing itself. You watched too, but you watched differently. There was a woman named Hafsa who had been in the harem for 11 years when you arrived. She was perhaps 30, perhaps older. Age was difficult to read in a place where everyone had learned to control their face, and she had the particular quality of stillness that you recognized immediately as the real thing, not performance. You watched Hafsa for 4 months before you spoke to her directly. You watched which requests she made and through whom she routed them. You watched which rooms she entered and which she found reasons to avoid. You watched who sought her out and who pretended not to notice her, and what the difference between those 2 groups meant about the actual structure of power in this place, as opposed to the official structure, which was a map of the territory drawn by someone who had never actually walked it. Hafsa never knew you were studying her. That was the point. You had been given the title of Haseki in November of 1605. You were perhaps 16. The title meant something precise in the Ottoman system. It meant Ahmed of High had elevated you formally above the other concubines, had given you a standing in the household that was recorded, official, legible to anyone who knew how to read the court. 1,000 aspas a day, paid from the imperial treasury. Your own apartments in the harem complex, which meant walls, which meant privacy, which meant a space that was yours in a way that nothing had been yours since the island. A position in the written record. You understood what the title was. You also understood, with a clarity that surprised even you, what it was not. It was not safety. Safety was an illusion in Topkapı, and the women who believed in it were the ones who ended up in the old palace, that other palace across the city, where women who were no longer useful were sent to live out whatever years remained to them in a comfortable, absolute irrelevance. The title was a platform, which was a different thing entirely from safety. A platform could be taken away. A platform could be stood on by someone else once you had been removed from it. A platform at the wrong height became the exact point from which a fall killed you. So you did not stand on it. You stood beside it, and you watched who else wanted it, and you began to understand the difference between holding a position and occupying it. Mahfiruz was Ahmed's first legal wife. She had given him Osman, who was healthy and growing, and already carrying the future of the dynasty in his small body, whether he understood it yet or not. That fact existed independently of anything you held or did not hold. A son was a son. The line of succession ran through Osman before it ran anywhere near you, and no title created for you by Ahmed's affection could change that arithmetic. You did not resent Mahfiruz for this, how she moved through a room, the particular quality of her presence, the way space reorganized itself around her, the way other women calibrated their own behavior in response to hers, which requests she made directly to Ahmed and which ones she routed through intermediaries, and what that routing told you about where she felt secure and where she did not, where she was generous, with whom, about what, and what she received in return for that generosity, because nothing in Topkapı was given freely, not even kindness, not even the appearance of it, where she pulled back, what she protected, what she could not afford to lose. You were building a map. You had been building it since the first week, adding detail with every conversation you witnessed, and every silence you correctly interpreted, and every mistake you watched other women make, and filed away under the category of things you would not do. By 1607, the map was detailed enough that you could navigate it in the dark. And then something changed. Not in the palace, in you. You felt the difference the way you feel the change in air pressure before a storm. Not a single moment, not a decision, but a shift in the quality of everything that followed from it. For 3 years you had been learning the system, learning it with a completeness and a patience that no one around you could have seen, because you had been careful to look like a woman who was simply surviving, simply adjusting, simply becoming Ottoman in the way that all the women here eventually became Ottoman, by absorption, by attrition, by the slow replacement of oneself with another. But learning a system and moving inside it are different things. Learning is what you do standing still. Moving is what you do when you have learned enough to know exactly where to step. In 1607, you began to move. Ahmed noticed you. You had known for some time that he noticed you. The title was evidence. The apartments were evidence. The 1,000 aspas a day were evidence. But noticing and seeing are different things, and what shifted in 1607 was that he began to see. You felt it in the way a room feels different when someone in it has changed their mind about something. Nothing you could have pointed to. Everything altered. He looked at you the way men look at women they are trying to understand, with an attention that was not casual and not entirely comfortable, the attention of someone who has encountered something that does not behave the way they expected it to behave and is not yet sure what to do with that. It was not an unkind look. It was merely a weight, and weight requires something solid underneath it, or it simply falls. You were underneath it. You had decided to be. You had watched enough women receive that look and mishandle it, had watched them lean into it too eagerly, perform for it, let it make them careless. The look felt like warmth, and warmth felt like safety, and safety made you soft, and soft in Topkapı was a way of being that the palace eventually consumed. You had watched women who were warmer than you, cleverer than you in some ways, better at the visible performances of court life, watched them make that mistake, watched the consequences arrive slowly and then all at once. So when Ahmed looked at you that evening in the particular way that meant something was being decided, you held his gaze and you did not give him anything. Not coldness. Coldness was a door closed, and you did not want doors closed. You wanted them open on your terms. You gave him stillness. You gave him the particular quality of attention that says, I am here, I have been here, I have not been going anywhere, and I intend to continue not going anywhere, and I am not going to make this easy for you. And the reason I am not going to make it easy for you is not cruelty, but something that does not yet have a name in any language either of us speaks. You gave him the room to cross the distance himself. He did, and still you did not smile. Not then, not first, The candles in the corridor burned the way candles burn in a place that has seen enough history to stop being surprised by it. Steadily, without drama, throwing the same warm, uneven light they had thrown on 100 women before you and would throw on 100 after. The stone walls of Topkapı held the cold of the Bosphorus winter all the way in, the way stone always holds cold, all the way through to the center. Outside, the city moved and breathed and argued and prayed and went about the business of being the capital of an empire. Inside, in this corridor, in this particular quality of silence, something was beginning. You were 18 years old, or near enough. You had a title and a stipend and a set of rooms and a map of this court that you had been drawing in your head for 3 years without anyone knowing you were drawing it. You had the name you had been given at birth, locked in a chest inside your chest, where it would stay until you decided what to do with it. You had a language that was not your first language, but that you now spoke well enough to hear what people were not saying, which was always more important than what they were. You were not yet powerful. You were something the palace had not yet learned to account for. You were ready. The candle nearest to you guttered once in a draught from somewhere deeper in the palace, a breath from the stones, or from the corridors beyond, or from the long history of this place pressing against the present moment the way history always presses, insistent, unignorable, patient in the way that only things without bodies can be patient. You did not flinch. You had not smiled first.